What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to My Social Life. This is the podcast where you can hear the real stories behind the people on social media. And today I'm joined by Tim Hyde. Tim is one of Manchester's 30 under 30. He was the 11th employee at both the LADbible and Social Chain. He is now a founder. He has his own company called TWH Media. He's done so much more than that. That's just a quick summary. Tim, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I need you to do my intros everywhere I go.
Hey, we'll see what we can do. So I kind of want to start this interviews with kind of like a two-pronged question. So first, as someone in Manchester, how did you become a Liverpool supporter, and how do you feel about them falling to second in the Premier League standings?
Looking back at it, it's definitely taught me a lot. I mean, growing up around here, being a Liverpool fan has definitely helped me in the business world. Dealt with a lot of heartbreak over the. Feel like I'm slightly weathered to it.
Yeah, that's fair. But growing up, sports was a big part of your life, correct?
Yeah, massive. Huge sports fan. I mean, watching anyone doing something at a high level, I find fascinating. We were very average at sort of football, soccer growing up, but I played lacrosse. Was super fortunate to play for England at under 19s level, and we actually had the World Cup in Manchester. So that was an amazing experience, and sort of, you know, you can look back and sort of see all the skills you learned from participating in sports, and just sort of that work ethic and, you know, passion that you have for sport has definitely transferred into kind of other areas of my life anyway.
Mm-hmm. So I'm very curious as to how you found lacrosse. How did that all come about?
So, yeah, I mean, very average sort of athletically, could always run for a long time, but never the quickest. And so football, you know, could pick a pass, but was pretty average and quite competitive. So I found that kind of frustrating. And my next door neighbour, they had basically like college coaches or ex-college players coming over to the UK and played in the UK and sort of taught in schools, and they actually lived next door to me. And so, you know, we have a massive wall outside my house where we just basically threw a lacrosse ball against, you know, sort of got into it, fell in love with it, such a fast-paced game. Yeah, sort of 15 years of playing had a great time.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what are some lessons kind of that you've learned through playing sport that you carry into the business world today?
I think knowing how to communicate with different people in different ways. You know, you've got you know, leaders in a team that, you know, you don't really need to say anything to. You've got some people that, you know, might need a quiet word. You've got some people that you really can't, you know, be too sort of aggressive towards because that's not in their nature. And so, especially I think in the sort of space over here, you know, playing with older people, having relationships with people from different backgrounds and different ages was something that, you know, I kind of enjoyed actually, and has massively helped me kind of moving forward. And then the second biggest thing was sort of, which I really didn't realize until later in life, was, you know, really putting in the work paid off. I kind of always thought, you know, there was some natural skill there, but actually a lot of it, you know, when you look back at how I was at school, you know, didn't put in as much effort as I did to lacrosse, and rewards in lacrosse because I put in those extra hours, extra training, extra, you know, gym sessions, things like that. Whereas in school, it was kind of the bare minimum. What can you get away with? And, you know, you look at the different results, and they're, yeah, very, very different. So, yeah, getting out what you put in is definitely something I learned from sports.
Yeah, and then your original intention was kind of to make sports almost a part of your career because you wanted to be a sports journalist at first, right?
Yeah. I think, you know, that's hilarious. I think growing up, we all always have aspirations, and I was so into sport. I did a few internships, sort of 14, 15, 16, at a newspaper covering sort of Southampton Football Club down south. Really, really enjoyed that. Just enjoyed the kind of gravitas around high-level sport, and yeah, you know, was an average writer, and, you know, feel like I always had a good eye for a story, and that was definitely what I wanted to do leaving school. And yeah, things definitely turned out a little bit differently.
Yeah, can you talk about some of those internships and placements that you had? Because I believe I heard you talk about one time you were working like 100 hours a week unpaid.
I did 13, got okay results, but still quite average, and basically just got this amazing internship and opportunity to do my national journalism exams, and then basically, instead of paying for the course, you just work there as an intern. And that was actually, funnily enough, the reason I had to give up playing lacrosse was because, Mondays were 8 till 10 p.m. Because the course was sort of after the full working day. Then we had, I think it was a Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, working, 8, 12 hours kind of a day, unpaid. Living off my parents, was living on a very tight budget. I remember the days of not being able to go to a bar or a pub and really afford a drink. And that was just the reality of it. But I was quite fortunate that I knew that was my, college, university. Very intense, but a shorter period of time. And that, that wasn't easy. That was some rough times just from a, living standpoint. And I actually worked in an office on my own. There wasn't enough space for me in the real office. So I just worked in a room on my own for kind of 10, 12 hours a day, which was a steep learning curve. And yeah, when I then got a job that I actually enjoyed, I, really didn't take that for granted. And long term, that's definitely kind of paid dividends.
Yeah. And then, so how did you keep going, working 100 hours a week in a room by yourself? Like, what was it within you that allowed you to keep going?
Ooh, I don't know. I mean, maybe a little bit of fear, really, I think one of my strengths and weaknesses, I definitely care far too much what people think about me. And I kind of would have cared the fact that, only a base level of qualifications, no university degree, and then basically going into I'd have to find another career. This was the quickest and best route to get to where I thought I wanted to go. So I think it was just a logical thing, just sort of having to bullet and understand that it wasn't going to be perfect right now, but this kind of investment and putting up with all that shit in the short term was gonna be the right decision for my career. I just had that mindset, and that certainly motivated me and carried me on through some of those tougher times.
Yeah. And one of the things I've heard you talk about that you learned there was that you were working 100 hours a week, but you were watching people work 120 hours a week.
So what I mean as well is, like, there were some people who were, older than me, people with master's degrees who were also concerned, and they were actually having to work part-time jobs on top of this 100 hours a week job, or finding ways to make a living and survive. And I was astounded by that. And also what I kind of really saw was the people that were putting more into their craft, getting there early, staying late, putting in those extra hours to get up to that, 100, 120 hours a week, which is actually crazy.
Yeah.
They were improving far quicker than I was, and you could just see it, even over a 3-month period. Not necessarily saying we got like graded, but you could see the quality of the writing and the story, the actual, quality of the layout codes, and the more technical things that you kind of learn by practice. These guys were far ahead of me. I didn't want to get left behind, so I just needed to kind of up my work game. And again, yeah, when you find something you actually start enjoying, it was much easier kind of after that point.
And it was shortly after there that you ended up at the LADbible, correct?
I did indeed, yeah. Very fortunate.
So how did you get a job there?
So I got a job there, and basically in Manchester there was a graffiti artist called Axie, and he painted this amazing mural of the Breaking Bad kind of scene. So it was a Heisenberg mural, super lifelike, and we wrote a story on it, and it was actually really controversial because it was just round the corner from where had been a big meth lab bust. So just sort of people in the comments, this was only a very small website, really blew up, kind of thousands and thousands of comments, and, did really well. And basically that story helped me and helped the website. And what happened, after that, he did a second mural, which was actually in the LADbible offices. And it was it was kind of a picturesque painting of a Louis Vuitton advert with Pele, Maradona, and I think Zidane, but I can't quite remember. Anyway, 3 famous soccer players, football players, and I kept asking him, where is this mural? Like, it'd be a great story. And he told me it was at the LADbible's offices, and basically I tracked down where that was, and had no idea. He thought it was sort of a kid in a bedroom. He didn't really think it was a legitimate business at this point. And met the CEOs, Gary and Gaz and Solly, sorry. And yeah, we got on really well. The story did very well, and 2 months later they offered me a job. So that's kind of the look I needed to kind of get into this field.
Yeah. And then while you were at the LADbible, you experienced like a ton of growth over that period. I think I have written down here it was something along the lines of like 1.8 million to 9.9 million likes in around 10 months.
Yeah, something like that. That was just on Facebook, and then obviously, and I mean, for the business then, we were so Facebook reliant. I think a lot of these media publishers still are, but back then, that was driving, I think, sort of 98.5% of traffic, which equals pretty much 98.5% of revenue at that point. So, gaming the algorithms, understanding, that balancing of content. We really sort of created a format that has definitely been utilized around the world of, basically boosting that organic reach, building the momentum, dropping a kind of article so it sort of has all this sort of reward in the algorithm. And basically we're able to, one, grow the social channels rapidly, and also sort of grow our user base and grow the daily traffic massively as well.
Yeah. And then I think we don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but I think I saw somewhere that you went from being employee of the year and then a couple months later you ended up getting laid off. Like what happened in that period?
It did. That took me a little while to be kind of confident enough to kind of speak about. I think, young internet companies, that can be, really high staff turnover, some for just reasons, some for unjust reasons. I'm always kind of, although I kind of look back on it and think, and that was my first job, so I could definitely have, handled myself differently, handled different situations differently. I was pretty shocked that came, and however, you can look back on it kind of positively because of all the great stuff I did learn, and it unlocked more opportunity at Social Chain. But I was pretty shocked at the time, and that was a real hit to the system, and took me a long while to kind of get over. I naively thought I would have been there for the rest of my life, and loved it and loved the team, and managers happened, but it is what it is in the kind of savage social media world.
Mm-hmm. And then one of the things that I saw you write, I think it was on LinkedIn, is that from your time at the LADbible, you're good at understanding what will resonate with people and finding viral stories. Do you have any advice for people as to what they should be looking for when it comes to content like that?
Yeah, I think so. I think something that I've always kind of really championed is putting yourself in other people's shoes, whether that's, putting yourself in a 35-year-old woman's shoes. How do they resonate with a specific bit of content? And understanding and reverse engineer the content from the audience you're targeting has really, really helped. And, I think it comes down to just understanding, what's your elevator pitch? What are the buzzwords? What are the kind of metrics that people, can just hear and understand quickly? And I think that it's just over time you kind of learn what people respond to, and you get better every time. So just sort of practice makes perfect. But, can you honestly say if someone tweeted that in front of you, put that headline in front of you, would you read it? Or can you frame it differently so you would read it? And kind of just understanding and playing with that as a concept, I think can work really well, and help people optimize their content specifically.
Mm-hmm. And then so shortly after the LADbible is when you ended up at Social Chain, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. So how did that opportunity come around?
Literally, the team was in Manchester. Obviously from Manchester, so very lucky that it was local, and they were looking for kind of a junior sort of social media and sort of writer kind of hybrid position, and basically sent an email to the kind of contact form at Social Chain. It was answered by now a guy called Ash, who's one of my best friends, sort of 4 or 5 years later. Basically came in for an interview and got on really well with Dom and the team, and sat in this tiny little co-working space office in the centre of Manchester, which is kind of even more crazy, the fact that Social Chain now own the entire building. And we were, when I got there, it was, shared by 3 different businesses on these kind of white collapsible tables, and just a group of kids. And yeah, I mean, being part of that journey has definitely been one of the most special things I could have ever asked for. The amount of learning, the amount of life learnings, the great people. It was, feel very blessed that I was part of that, and hopefully can continue to do some cool things.
Mm-hmm. And then from being there in the early stages, looking back, would you have predicted it to have this amount of success so fast as it has?
I think in some parts yes, and in some parts no. I think Steve to this day is one of the most phenomenal, brilliant, smart, driven people I've ever met, and him as a CEO and a driving force of the company really is a recipe for success. And so, yeah, I think as a team, we all had faith in each other. I kind of referenced a lot that internal and, first 15, 20 people at Social Chain were really phenomenal. We also, and they also had this massive advantage of having something like 300 million followers worth of, free media accounts. And so you combine that with, viral marketing, good marketing knowledge, a good understanding of the social platforms and content, then with sort of great amplification, who can argue with that? And, some of our first case studies were, driving 2 million downloads to an app in 2 weeks. And we worked with Spotify very, very early on. We worked with ASOS very early on. Having those big brand case studies behind us, definitely, we just had to walk into sales meetings and, pitch honestly rather than having to oversell. And I think that's definitely a formula for success that I've tried to take forward in.
And I think you're the head of campaigns at Social Chain, and you work with massive companies. Can you give some examples of some of the companies that you've worked with?
Yeah. So very lucky, and also due to the size of the business, rose quite quickly, became head of campaigns, so looked after everything strategized and executed, as well as helping out a lot of the offices in New York and Berlin as well. So sort of Apple, Spotify, Nike, Adidas, Puma, Google, Amazon, Sony, P&G, Head and Shoulders. Did a lot of consultancy for UFC, Eurosport, ASICS. There's crazy brands when you kind of think of it, and some amazing opportunities and some great business connections, and definitely a very cool experience that I'll never forget.
So do you have any tips or advice for people that are dealing with large scale clients?
I think the vanity metric definitely will normally help you get more business. It's just the way of the world, that social currency, that angle. People are interested in the fact that, you work with them. What did you do? Can you do that for us? Is a great platform to go off in kind of a pitch. What I'd also say is, typically the success of a campaign comes down to putting the work in, doing the 1% things, and the buy-in from the client. Especially when typically in social media, it's not an area where most clients and CMOs, marketing directors, CEOs have a huge amount of experience, and they really need to trust in a specialist, the fact that they're going to do the best for that business and for that campaign. And so working with big brands isn't easy. Apple, just on the brand guidelines, there's 16 layers of sign off, just because that branding is so amazing, and that's one of the reasons why. But when you want to do something that's fast paced and reactive on social, and it has to go through 16 layers of sign off, that's definitely more difficult. And so depending on the client, it depends on the relationship, depends what you're going to get out of it, and depends on a lot of factors. But I think skipping forward a couple of years, my favorite clients aren't necessarily some of the biggest names. It's just getting to work with people that you think are brilliant, people that in their own right you learn from and enjoy working with and have a great working relationship, and then usually again, getting to create great results for people is also, super rewarding. So I think that combination is actually better than, it's just Apple Music, or it's Revolut, or it's Warner, or whoever. And it really comes down to the sort of more personal approach to the client management, I think.
And then looking at almost the other side of that, do you have advice for people that are just starting and how they should go about trying to land their first client?
First client. For me, it's always been pretty straightforward. I just had, case studies behind me, so I could just sort of present a logical business case. I think if you're just starting off, whether it's in social media marketing, digital marketing, PR, branding, whatever it is, I think you have to provide value up front, or understand that you need to get on the wagon, and never work for kind of free, but adding as much consulting hours, whether that's doing a few different mock-ups even before you've got to the pitch. Trying to do those 1% things, I think will really, really help you close some of those first deals. And then after that, it simply is just going, right, we did a great job for them. What did we do? And building that business case for your other clients, and trying to sort of link that within an industry is super important. And I think that's something that I've told lots of friends who've now started their business. Understand your niche, create a great business case, and then pitch it as honestly and authentically as you can. I've always believed that and how I try and do sales. I'm not this sort of North American sales guy gonna, Wolf of Wall Street sell you this pen. It's more, if I was in your position, honestly, this is how I would spend your budget. Like, not trying to make as much money on margin as I can. Like, this is what I would do, and this is what I can do it for. And then, you win some and you lose some.
That's fair. And then as another thing that I thought was very interesting from your time at Social Chain was you helped build the 9 most engaged live streams of all time, I believe.
That was when Facebook were really pushing live and actually doing a lot of outdoor advertising themselves to sort of get publishers using the kind of service. And, when basically a lot of these social platforms bring out a new tool, it's usually kind of leveraged and higher ranked in the algorithm because they want, advertisers and early adopters to get the most out of that tool. And we really kind of jumped on that and found out a way that you could kind of stream really effectively, multi-cam streaming, and also have these communities we could amplify, really great and engaging scenarios on. And we kind of found a mechanic and a formula that went super, super well, and we're able to have a hell of a lot of success and a lot of happy clients from that.
Can you tell me what it was like to get over 2 million comments in the course of 2 hours?
It was insane. I mean, from a metric standpoint, it was really great. The guys at the Soul Supply, I still have a great relationship with. But I mean, actually, the stream itself nearly broke a couple of times. So we were just sort of so nervous about keeping this high quality production value. And internet connection, electrical problems. So yeah, it was probably it took a few days for that to kind of sink in because you were sort of so in the moment of, right, let's just not screw this up. Great momentum. I think they grew, something like 18,000 followers on Facebook within that live stream as well, and they were able to then sort of really leverage some of the sales off the back of that social currency. And I think that just proved to me that, with a great idea, with great distribution, you can have a lot of impact on social, and that's really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any advice for people today or now in 2019 when it comes to live streaming?
I'm just a huge believer that if you're providing value to your audience and if you're creating and are confident it's good content, put it out there. People get very, caught up on optimal posting times and optimal, amount of posting, or is the branding on this live stream good enough? Now, if all of those things are correct, you are more likely to be successful, but don't stop you actually, executing on that. I think that's one of the important things. But yeah, I think it comes down to understanding your audience and are you adding value? You're not creating this podcast just to sort of get some airtime for yourself. You're trying to think, if I was in, a random entrepreneur or someone who's interested about getting social, what would they want to see? What are the stories? What are the people? You'll reverse engineer it from your audience, not, oh, hey, I want to meet this guy. That would be really cool for me. And I think that as a premise is really powerful. And from a Facebook Live standpoint, aren't the easiest things to grow in the world, but as a consistent content can work really, really well.
Mm-hmm. And then I think it was, sorry, I'm just jumping completely to a different topic here, but in 2016, I believe you accepted a Pacific North Award on behalf of Social Chain.
Oh, Pacific North, yeah, that was a great evening. Lots of alcohol and celebrations. That was a very cool year.
Yeah, how did you get to be in the position where you were accepting the award on behalf of the company?
I think, I mean, at Social Chain, we won a hell of a lot of awards. We did some really cool work. I think Steve was tired of going to a lot of award ceremonies, and as the way of rewarding the hard work of staff, because I mean, we worked some really long hours. I think, some of the senior team went to this awards night, and we were there with some of the sort of founding team, me, Michael, I think Alexia was there, and just sort of 5 or 6 of us, and went up and accepted the award and kind of just said, how incredible it was to just sort of be here as a bunch of overlooked kids, because, originally in that first year we were kind of overlooked for a lot of these awards, and, the industry doesn't necessarily like disruption like that. And, it just felt like a very cool moment to sort of share that with some great people. And it was a very cool experience.
Yeah. And I kind of want to talk about Steve specifically. What was it like working for him with your time at Social Chain?
I mean, amazing, to be honest. An amazing experience. there's certainly no one like him. He's incredibly busy and is, balancing an incredible amount of plates and people and relationships and contacts, and it's amazing he's continues to function at this sort of level. I think is amazing, but I think I just learned so much, and he was so willing to sort of give, insight, and would always be at the end of a WhatsApp message if you needed anything or wanted to talk about anything. It wasn't always the lessons that he, purposely chose to give. It was like working from his successes. It was understanding, I thought you made a mistake there, so how would I go about a situation differently? And from a culture standpoint, I think that's where Social Chain have had their most success. I mean, it goes down to some of that, original team, Hannah Anderson, Alex Aiden, and they were able to create a culture where people had just wanted to improve. We started off having this kind of like self-help kind of hour every week, bi-weekly, where people would, talk about their favorite excerpts from a book or TED Talk. And although as you get super busy, that kind of tails off, what it did instill is the fact that people were always sharing updates and articles and different, social platform modifications or great bits of content or advertising, or, hey, I've just read this book, does anyone want to borrow it? And that kind of mindset helped improve everyone exponentially. And I think you have to look at that cultural thing that Steve and Dom really, set out and created, and that filtered down across the senior team and everyone junior, and has been a massive driver for their success and their continued, success or success at the top.
Mm-hmm. So it might be hard to quantify, but is there like 3 key takeaways that you took from your time working at Social Chain?
Yeah, I think the first one, which was really sort of hard to comprehend at the time, was Steve was always like, it really doesn't matter about the money. Just sort of, especially as a junior person in the business and a young person, it's right, next promotion, next pay rise, how can I keep bettering myself? And you want to do that aggressively. And we were in such an amazing industry that was possible. But what was really clear, and I kind of only found out later, is as soon as you get a level of financial freedom, that's really not what it's about. It's about the impact. It's about the relationships. It's about working with, interesting and cool people. And he preached that from day one. And although I don't think I took that on board as much as I should at the time, that's been a real key thing from my mindset of just sort of, it's about my happiness. So when I go into, client relationships and I think these guys are going to be pretty tricky here, is it really worth my time? I have the confidence to go, no, because my quality of life is so much higher without that, couple of £1,000 retain. Like my life is better, and focusing on, quality of life rather than how much money I have in the bank account has been a real key thing. I think work ethic is definitely another one. They really, set the table on that one. A lot of great times and great nights late in the office playing ping pong while working at a bar in the office. So a hell of a lot of alcohol is consumed, but while working, and we bonded over a lot of those sort of table tennis matches and FIFA nights and things like that, but also sort of making sure we were getting our work in. So that's probably number 2. And then I think there's what I'd sort of collect the third in is all the intangible things. I think Steve really, for me, set out a framework of lots of opportunities that you can, really take, and the fact that you can build a life for yourself if you want it. And he had no experience in building a company until he started Warpark and then Social Chain, and he just always was so driven to stay on top of trends, to stay on top of reading, to interact with people and be good to people. And I think there was just so many mini lessons in that. There wasn't necessarily another like third big thing. It was just sort of really learning how we interact with people was really, really cool, and has helped me a hell of a lot.
And I think a big part of your personal narrative is, and you've alluded to it a couple of times now, is the fact that you didn't go to university and you were always set on not going. So why was that your decision to not go to university?
Just for the career I wanted, though, just because I was lucky to have some insight into the journalism industry at the time. My grades were okay, but pretty average, and just the opportunity in front of me presented itself, and it seemed like the most logical thing. It wasn't necessarily at the time like, oh, I hate university or I don't think it's useful, but what's the best path for me is definitely down this road. now having perspective to look back on, I've been very fortunate to, really learn what it's like to work in different businesses. And, friends have had 3-4 years of having an amazing time and having little responsibility and, have some of the battle scars and great memories to show for it. Whereas, I had to, work pretty hard, and it's a balance for different people. But I think university still has a place. But I think for anyone in social, I think it's just sort of getting that experience and focusing on your self-development. You're not going to learn as much from a university course there.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like learning and your self-development, the reason you ended up leaving Social Chain was to kind of improve your skills in a different aspect, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I think what was really key at the time specifically is we were meeting a lot of CEOs, CMOs, and you could always tell where their background was, which was fine. But like we'd be in, 6, 7, 8-figure pitch, and they would go, "Well, where's the SEO strategy?" And we would just have to say to them, like, SEO is really important. However, that's not what we do. And, you could always tell what their background was. Also, like, how does this combine with print? Like, print, if you do it well, print can kind of work. But I didn't just want to be this kind of ignorant marketer that only understood one channel. And so going to TK was a great opportunity to understand how different medias can integrate together. It was a great opportunity to manage people and learn on a global scale, which really, really excited me at the time. And, I was able to just learn a hell of a lot about the different platforms. Although, I can't necessarily execute as at a high level across, pretty much all the digital marketing functions. I still have a good understanding and can understand how to strategize for them, which now going into what I do now is really, really important.
And then now you have your own company, which I kind of mentioned in the intro. So it's TWH Media. How's that kind of going for you?
Yes, it's good. It's going really well. I'm extremely, extremely fortunate. Get to work with some huge clients still, some small clients still, have some great and really exciting case studies, and some sort of business wins that I'm super, super proud of. And really for me, it facilitates the life I want to lead. I get to travel a lot. I get to, interact with really interesting people I can learn from. And for me, what kind of more do I want? People say, what's your next sort of 5-year plan? And it's to really sort of continue doing this, maybe scale up the financials, maybe scale up some of the bigger, better, more exciting case studies. But, I'll be a pretty lucky man if I can, continue to do what I do now. And work with some of the people I am now. I'm really, really lucky.
Mm-hmm. And do you have a team under you, or is it just you currently?
So depending on the project, I have specific contractors. My word is something that, to me is just so important. And so if I'm taking over a project or helping someone with something, I need to have a pretty established relationship with someone to go, like, this is under my name. Like, please, can you execute for me? Like, it's pay to play. If you do this, I will give you this money. No drama. Fantastic. But from an agency standpoint, felt at Social Chain and at TK, helped scale agencies pretty quickly and had a great time. And I think one of my skills is having good perspective. And, you look at Social Chain and you go, 2014, amazing time to get into social media. You've got Steve, you've got an amazing internal team. You've got 300 million followers of social media accounts. And that as a business, had moments where you weren't sure if it was going to survive. And I really think that I'm a good social media marketer. I'm a good marketer. I understand that. And that's what I want to focus on, not, HR issues, cash flow issues, worrying about the office space, worrying about the billion things that, a real CEO has to worry about day to day. I'm pretty selfish in the fact that, this is my small piece of the puzzle I'm good at. I like to think I'm good at it. I can do that for various different bits of different businesses. I can have a flexible working schedule, and that, really works for my life right now. But we'll see in the future.
And I just want to touch on some other projects that you have going on right now as well. One, I believe you're an advisor for TrueFan, and you're also working with a company called Boitabox, I believe.
Yeah. So I've been very fortunate to have had quite a lot of success on crowdfunding platforms, and Boita was one of the sort of last projects I had the fortune of working with a guy called Adam Boita, who is sort of ex-Pernod Ricard, an amazing marketer in his own right, and we were able to collaborate on a really great sort of vegan leather and sustainable fabric sort of bag project, which has gone to market and done really, really well. So that was very cool. And, with regards to TrueFan, I got involved with that sort of 14, 15 months ago. Helped sort of found the company with Manu Goswami, who's, an amazing Canadian entrepreneur, and Art Clear. We were both sort of Canada's 20 under 20, far smarter than I will ever be. And we built this basically social media analytics tool, which aggregates your most engaged and most influential followers. We've just raised a sort of $1 million through various angel investors, including a few sort of NBA players. And as the team's now sort of relocated from Vancouver to Toronto, I've taken a sort of step back from sort of CMO, and I'm now kind of focusing on more of an advisory role, introducing them to clients this side of the world, and making sure I'm making the right intros and sort of being an ambassador for the brand that I worked on for a little while.
Mm-hmm. And then one other thing that I heard you reference briefly, I think it was in another podcast maybe, is you're working on an early stage IG chatbot, I believe.
Yeah, so I worked with a company called Direct Heroes, another Canadian founder. I don't know why I'm surrounded by so many Canadians, but he's been working on that bit of tech for sort of 2 and a bit years, and helped sort of advise him around some of the sort of branding and launch strategy just before it goes to market. That's kind of been a long-term project that's just sort of there in the background, but Jeff's a great guy, and if he gets his product right, the sky's the limit for him.
And I wanted to ask you, as with your expertise, what do you like with Instagram automation? Because from my understanding, they're not a big fan of apps that come in and do automation. So I was just curious as to how that app or the chatbot's going to work.
No, not at all. Definitely a gray area. There's opportunity in the gray area, shall we say. So I instead of actually calling it a chatbot, I think the better way to describe it is probably sort of an Instagram DM sequencer. And so depending on the term that someone sends, they'll get a specific response. So it's great for sort of customer service or lead generation by sort of taking someone through a kind of automated funnel. The specific triggers and amounts that you can message people that keep you under the radar on that. And what I would say is it is sort of technically against the terms, but it's not something that's super automated and is going to mess up their platform. So hopefully Direct Heroes will be all right, depending on how Instagram what side of the bed Instagram wake up on.
Mm-hmm. And then just kind of on the same page, how do you feel about those automated likes and comment systems that people use?
I think engagement is really a false currency these days. It can be a great indicator for success on a post or a narrative or a niche, but really, actually, in this day and age, we really want to be sort of engaging people on a deeper level and making them feel. And there's different kind of social metrics you can and tools that you can use to measure that, rather than just sort of likes and retweets and shares. As for sort of bot farms, it's disappointing. It's definitely, caused a lot of negative PR around influencer marketing, which, can be a phenomenal channel for all ranges of businesses. However, when people are sort of cheating the system and, have 80% of their following in Bangladesh that they've just paid for, that kind of screws up the system. I think something does need to be done, and there's been reports over the past couple of weeks that Facebook are going to start sort of suing these companies, and I think rightly so. But I actually think if you have a good understanding of the social space, you can really kind of identify specific influencers, specific posts, and specific channels that are heavily leveraging bots and kind of fake likes and things like that. And it just means that as a marketer and as someone who works in the social space, I just have to do that extra layer of verification to ensure that the channels that you are using are legitimate, not just sort of paying 10p for 10,000 likes.
Mm-hmm. And I just listed off many different things that you're involved in. So what does your schedule kind of look like on a week-to-week basis?
Oh, I mean, it really depends. I mean, I suppose one of the great things is, although I've just preached about flexible living, is, for me, sometimes I have to do stuff. And that can be, 1, 2 a.m. That can be early morning. That can be, middle of the day. And so what I really enjoy is the fact that every day is different for me. It's not get up, shower, get in the car, go to work, or get on the tube or whatever it is. Every day is different, and I can sort of mold my life depending on what meetings, depending on what deliverables, depending on what I think is best for that day. And also just because I have sort of longer working days, I can usually get more in. And so, yeah, I mean, there's definitely not a split of like, hey, I'm going to spend an hour here on tree fan. I'm just going to spend an hour here on this client. It definitely comes in ebbs and flows. And I mean, it's hilarious. I've always prided myself on working very hard, but since having my own business, there's definitely been, a random Wednesday where I haven't had actually that much stuff to do. And, I think 18 months, 2 years in, I now have the confidence to go, well, if I haven't got stuff to do, I don't need to worry about that. Go to the gym in the middle of the day when it's quiet, or, go reward yourself by doing something out of the ordinary, because, there is a lot of that time where I am super busy and I am clogged up and need to work pretty hard late into the night or work around meetings. So, yeah, I think that's some advice I'm starting to give friends now is, work around your schedule, but try and make your schedule work for you.
Mm-hmm. And I kind of want to pivot a little bit more to your personal brand and your personal social media. So you're sitting, I think, at over 10,000 Instagram followers right now. So kind of what are some things that you did to grow that account?
Well, I mean, that was a lot of it was sort of hard work back in the day. My Instagram's been pretty stagnant for the past probably 3 years, which, on a level stresses me out a little bit. In an ignorant and arrogant sense, I think the content I post is pretty cool, but maybe it's more just too personal to me. Quite sadly into quite architecture. I love to travel. I love to take pictures when I go away, and that's a kind of content stream that I focus on. It's not business related or really focused on adding value to the audience. And so potentially, if I was auditing myself, that's something I could do better if I wanted to grow it as a channel. But for me, Instagram, I've always used it personally because I've never tried to drive business through it. It's more of just a channel for me. Is, do you remember when people kind of go somewhere, they might go to Africa and they'll have a folder of like 5,000 photos uploaded to Facebook. It's just like, mate, you are never going to look at those photos ever. And actually, I look at Instagram and go, I've got a pretty terrible memory unless it's prompted. And I can go, oh, yeah, that was amazing when I went to Copenhagen or Prague or Belfast or Budapest or New York or, all these places. And it's, that 1 or 2, 3 photos or that highlight can just bring back that feeling and those memories. And that's kind of how I use Instagram personally, but, not necessarily the best from a business sense anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I did want to ask you about travel, because just looking at your Instagram, you've been all over the world. Do you have any crazy travel stories? I always like to ask people that.
Yeah, I've got a few. When we were at TK, we got flown out to review and create content for a 5-star retreat in the middle of Kenya, in the middle of a 16,000 acre retreat in the middle of the Masai Mara. And we got to chase zebras on quad bikes. This is 16,000 acres of private land, and just got taken out and just got to roam free. And that, over these amazing cliffs and hills and just beautiful terrain. And, that was a pinch yourself moment. I mean, there's loads of crazy stories from all the places I've been, but that I think stands out as just like weird, but also amazing.
Mm-hmm. And then also with your personal brand, I touched on it in the intro, you were Manchester's 30 under 30. How did that award feel?
I mean, it's cool. It's one of those things. It's very cool to be recognized, and I think what's cooler is the social currency that comes with it. Especially when I'm doing podcasts, it's definitely something that gets mentioned. In day-to-day life, I don't think anyone's gone, "Hey, Mr. 30 under 30," because why would anyone? But I think cool to get recognized, and it's definitely potentially help get some awareness on my name, and that's great. But kind of like with anything in business, and I'm sure you find this, it's like, cool, achieve that, tick box, what's the next thing? It's really about the journey. It's not necessarily I've got these stakes in the ground that I have to achieve before a certain age. I quite like to do some cool things, but my happiness isn't going to be decided on that. It's really about, right, that was cool, enjoy that in the moment, cool, what's the next thing? How are we improving? What's the next thing I'm excited about? And that's kind of where my mind starts out anyway.
Mm-hmm. And I've also seen online that you do some keynote speaking as well. So what is typically like the topics of your speeches?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely been some, great social media masterclasses, really getting into the nitty gritty of how to sort of best drive acquisition through social media. Then that's what personally I think that's what I'm really good at. Looking at cross-channel. It's not just, oh, hey, he's a Facebook ads guy. Hey, he's just good at influence. It's really understanding how you can create that omni-channel strategy and distribute that risk and make sure all these integrated channels are working for you under this sort of coherent umbrella. And having sort of ran those type of campaigns for brands and create great results, I think that's something a little bit different because I've met friends that are specific Facebook marketers that are spending $1 million a month, getting 4 or 5 times return on ad spend, living on a beach and haven't got a care in the world. The one that I'm about to do kind of most over the summer is, social media in the financial industry, typically working with a lot of VC funds, a couple of fintech companies, banks, and a few kind of alternative property investment companies, and really sort of showing how you can, make money through social media for those channels on a cost per lead basis and also on a brand building basis. And I think that's something that is quite exciting for me because it's not something that I don't think anyone's done very well yet.
Mm-hmm. And another thing, so as I was scrolling through your Instagram, kind of just doing some research, there's a couple photos I wanted a little bit more like context to. The first one was, I don't know if it was a selfie, but it was a photo of you and Conor McGregor.
Yeah, so that's Social Chain days. I think he did a couple of these over the world, but it was just a really candid interview and honest just talk with him. He had his flashy and kind of arrogant Conor McGregor moments talking about other fighters, but really deep down he's a very family orientated and an extremely intelligent guy. And yeah, just getting to meet him after was a very cool moment. He's definitely got an aura and a sort of sense of confidence about him that's actually very appealing, rather than sort of feeling he's super arrogant and kind of a turn off.
Mm-hmm. And then another one was you were at the Facebook London office recently.
Yeah, I've done a few, visited quite a few Facebook offices all over the world. The London one is definitely pretty. There were definitely advantages of working at Facebook, and got a couple of account managers there, and had a friend who's a bit of an influencer who was going through one of their creator programs, and so I came in to sort of help him set up some of his sort of social channels. And those offices certainly motivate you and show what's possible.
And then so the last Instagram post was a photo of you in Gary Vee's office.
Yes. So I got to live in New York for a couple of months and have some amazing connections and friends like Elliot Robinson, who used to work for Gary. I'm pretty close with a guy called Tyler Babin, who used to work on Gary's personal team. So I had relationships there, and have working late and in that kind of work state of mind, worked out of Vayner a couple of times and been there and drank wine and ate pizza more than a few times, but never unfortunately met Gary. So very, very cool to sort of be in around that world. He's really pioneered and led the way in the kind of social space. And someone that has definitely made my life or provided a lot of opportunity for my life, whether he knew it or not. So one day I hope to meet him, but yeah, definitely, those Vayner guys are a different breed, and he's definitely cultivated some very special people specifically on that personal brand team.
Mm-hmm. And then the final post is actually a Twitter post. It was $12 to build your startup team, and you chose Beyonce over Gary, and I was just curious as to the reasoning behind that.
I mean, there's loads of reasons. One, I mean, actual, real influence and star power. You can look at, what is it, Ivy Park compared to the K-Swiss collaboration. One selling hundreds of millions in dollars, one might just do about 7 figures. So that's one. I think also just based on the functionality of my team, a real leader from the front. And I think I was just looking at it from a balance standpoint that, he gives away so much free advice that, you can use all of Beyonce's star power and nuance there and try and sort of pick away at Gary's advice for free. I think that was kind of tactical. So that kind of half explains that.
That's awesome. And I wanted to ask you about LinkedIn, because that's something you're really big on right now.
Yeah, have been for the past 3 years. LinkedIn's categorically changed my life, opened up some of the best opportunities that I've ever. It's because of something like there's 600 million users, something like 1% of those people post. There's a huge opportunity for people to create and curate an audience on that platform. And, one of the few social media platforms now that you can really generate organic reach and potentially even go viral. So from a time investment standpoint, there is no better platform to build relationships and get your opinion out there. And because people are in that business frame of mind, it unlocks business opportunities. I think I've had something like 10, 11 million views on my profile in the past few years, and that's opened up opportunities. Would have never met Swish through TrueFan, would have never worked with Liverpool Football Club. I'm a huge Liverpool fan, so that was a great opportunity. All these have come from creating and distributing content on LinkedIn and, getting inbound leads or being connected to people through that. So 100%, I think everyone has the opportunity to really, go all in on LinkedIn because it certainly changed my life.
Yeah. Is there anything else in the social media landscape that you're kind of keeping an eye on right now that you're looking at as an opportunity?
I think Snapchat advertising, depending on the product that you have and the audience that you're looking create for, I think, people are getting some pretty significant return on ad spend on sort of one-click swipe up, which is super interesting. Cultivating an audience on Snapchat is incredibly difficult. And as a marketer, I've been left frustrated by it on more than one occasion. But I think, looking at distributing your kind of performance marketing, and it's direct to consumer, Snapchat's definitely an area that people are really sort of managing to smash at the moment. And the same with Pinterest. Pinterest paid media platforms actually, sneaky good is how I describe it. And, if there's a lot of competition on these other platforms, maybe you're spending huge amounts of budgets on other areas, actually you can distribute a little into these other places, and that might help from a return on ad spend standpoint.
I think the Snapchat's a really interesting one. Like, I just personally have stopped using it, so it hasn't really been on my radar as of late. But I had an old professor do a post on Twitter where he asked his students to put their phones down. I think it was a grade 10 class, to put their phones down and not use them for an hour, and then they're gonna tabulate how many Snapchats, DMs, and texts they got. It was like maybe 20 DMs, 30, 40 texts, and then hundreds of Snapchats. I couldn't believe it.
I mean, when you really think about it, that's okay. It's actually quite normal. But then when it's like in this sort of, kind of rough tally chart in front of you, you just go, wow. I mean, that's how kind of addicted we are to our phones. And, I thought that was a very, very cool bit of content and also, nice little bit of market research for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. So what's next for you, man? What are some things you got on the horizon?
I think for me, since sort of Q4 last year, the real focus and mindset is just executing at a high level. I just really need to execute at the level I think I can, and I'll be very well looked after. Working in the kind of more financial industry, the upside's much, much bigger. And so if I can, generate results there, there's certainly margin and opportunity for me there. So that's the big thing, not worry too much about anything else and really focusing on, executing and doing what I say I'm going to do, and, building hopefully a little bit of a niche for myself in this industry, and hopefully can then, rinse and repeat once you've got the case study.
Yeah. Is there ever a thought to do like some of that investment side on your personal brand? Like, I know you said Instagram, you don't really try to provide value, but would there be like a YouTube play potentially in the future?
Maybe. I think when it comes to video content, I'm always nervous that I want to create something that I'm proud of, not just sort of these self-esque videos. I find that uncomfortable. I'm not saying that that's bad for other people. I just think that's not who I am. And so, if an opportunity arose where, had some good time with people that I trusted to produce some good content and we had a good series for it, I think I'd love to be involved. But right now, I think, creating value and content posts and, writing sort of longer form LinkedIn stuff is where my kind of value add content really goes. Hopefully later down the line, there might be some more video and potentially hopefully some more podcast stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. What are some long-term goals that you're kind of chasing?
Ooh, I'd love to be Forbes 30 under 30. I mean, actually, when you look behind the curtain, it really doesn't mean a whole lot, and people get on it for different reasons. But just growing up in the kind of era I did, I think it just to me, I think it'd be really fucking cool, for lack of a better word.
Yeah.
And then, financially, I really want to buy a house this year. That's the kind of financial target. But, other than that, man, it's really kind of, making sure I'm staying on top of my health, having a good work-life balance, continuing to travel, and just really, if I execute on the projects I've got on now, I'm going to be pretty plain sailing for the next few years anyway.
That's awesome. And now before we wrap up, I'd like to do just like a quick Q&A, just like random questions that don't fit into the regular interview. First question, what's a show you're binging right now?
A show I'm binging right now. I'm rewatching Game of Thrones, if that's a little bit sad. It's not a show, but I just watched the Michael Jackson documentary last night. That's crazy. What else? I'm really looking forward to Billions coming back. I'm like set. I mean, that's just so well produced. HBO do such a good job with stuff like that. So I think from a TV standpoint, that's kind of where I'm at.
What's your favorite app that's not Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter?
This is really sad. Expensify.
Okay.
And so basically, if you ever have like receipts, and I have to do a lot of expensing, is you just take a picture of it and it automatically reads everything, the tax number, amount, and it like automatically goes into my accounting software. So that's just saves me so much time, and means I don't have thousands of receipts in my wallet. So really sad comment, but yeah, that's been super helpful for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are there any creators that you follow that you recommend people should go and check out?
Other than the big names, I think Steve Bartlett's podcast is phenomenal. It's done multiple times. Some of his sort of vlog content isn't, what I resonate with, but his podcast is really, really good. I'm working with a guy called Reggie Yates, who's a amazing producer in the UK. His podcast is really, really good. It's a really authentic sort of friends chat, and I think is a nice angle on that. Who else's content? I don't know. You know what? There's a guy called what's his name? Dave Perel. That's it, on Twitter.
Yes.
Dave Perel. He's not this sort of like out there flashy wannabe entrepreneur, wannabe millionaire, but he's really cultivated an extremely strong audience, mainly on Twitter, to be fair, by just creating great content. And he's, really doubled down on the skill he has, which is writing. And I think he creates some really great stuff and some really interesting insights. So he's definitely worth a follow.
I actually recently just started following him, so it's funny that you say that. Next question. I know you said you don't really every day is different, but do you have any consistent morning and night routines you try to do every day?
I try and get the gym once a day, and it helps me so much more from a focus standpoint. I'm really big on efficiency, so I like to do things when other people are working. So I'd much rather get up super early to miss the traffic, or I'd much rather get up later and miss the traffic and let people work. So I think that's the real key for me, is just trying to do everything as efficiently as possible. But if you're in a bit of a bad mood, a gym session can really change that.
As someone who's traveled a lot and done a lot of things, I'm curious as to 3 things on your bucket list right now.
Japan, just so. I mean, that's the pinnacle for me. Never been to Singapore, but never been to Japan, and just from a beauty standpoint, it's really got everything. So I'm gonna try and get that. I've never flown business class. Would love to do that at some point. Just see how the other half live. That would be mini kind of throwaway thing. That'd be pretty cool. Traveling. I'm going back to New York in June to speak at a conference. So for me, my favorite place in the world. It's just got an energy about it that I just find so amazing. And so, yeah, really looking forward to catching up with some friends. Just going back and experiencing a city in a way that you haven't before can be really exciting, just as much as, other opportunities going to places you've never been before.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. I just recently went to New York for the first time, and it's just, there's something different about that city. It's incredible. Next question. So you're going to dinner and you can take 3 people. They can be anybody, dead or alive. Who would you take to dinner?
I've got a controversial answer for the first one.
Okay.
First one, because if he turns up, then you know, and if he doesn't, you know. So that's, that's kind of one for me. Who I would take on dinner? I think Elon Musk is pretty fascinating. Just a real unique perspective. Big fan of Obama and everything he kind of stands for. Getting too political. I just think, how he carries himself and his ideologies are really interesting, and he's had a very unique perspective on the world that I'd love to ask him a few questions about. What's the last one? Probably Gary, just because I've never met him. Just as a social media nerd, that'd be a pretty cool one, and it'd be interesting to see what questions he would ask the other people. He's, I know him very well, and they speak so highly. You don't have to love every bit of content he creates, but you have to respect a lot of the things about him. And one of the things I actually say a lot about Gary is, people really try and emulate him and just copy him, at face value, whereas actually I think you get the most value out of Gary when you sort of take his learnings and then apply them to your life. And so I massively believe that working harder means that you're more likely to be successful. The harder you work, it puts you in a better position to be successful. But however, you're never going to succeed if you're working on a project which is the Uber for umbrellas. It's just a totally pointless concept. And so, don't just think, okay, I want to be a keynote speaker, I want to travel the world, I want to be like Gary. What are the kind of micro learnings that you can take and then apply to your life straight away? He has an insatiable appetite for entrepreneurship, which I don't think is, I don't think anyone could achieve that. But what can you learn? How can you apply that to your life, and how do you make that work for you? And I think that's one of the best things that I took from both Gary and Steve.
I know you might have hit on this a little bit, but what's the best advice you've ever gotten?
Sorry if this cuts out. I'm on 2% battery, but I think the best.
That's okay.
I've ever had. Be a sponge for information. As not a sexy quote, but when I was sort of 18, working at LADbible, Solly we were sort of talking in a room after a night out. And he just said, constantly be learning, constantly be looking it up and soaking it all in, and not just sort of taking a meeting at face value. You wouldn't believe some of the intangible bits of advice you can get, walking into a sales meeting and sitting on opposite sides. So it's not just crowding the other thing, they aren't things that people teach you. They're things that you have to sort of understand. And so just looking at everything as an opportunity to get better. Life's not going to work out perfectly, but you can always learn. And being a sponge for information has maybe not been the best advice I'd get, but something I always remember.
Mm-hmm. And we'll try and fly. We got 2 questions left, so we'll try to fly through these before your phone dies. What's one thing so important everybody needs to know?
Happiness equals success. People put a lot of it on monetary value, financial things, that they have a beautiful girlfriend or boyfriend, but actually, happiness, if you're the happiest person in the world, you're the most successful person in the world. Being able to look yourself in the mirror and be happy with the person you are and the decisions you make, it really, really is pivotal to everything, I think. And actually, just focusing on and reverse engineering your happiness is a really great place to start with any conversation and any depth. Working around that is the best thing, I think.
Last question. So I kind of flip the script and I give you the question. What's one thing that you would want to know the answer to about anything?
That's a good question. I think, I think how to sort of further relationship skills, because I think relationship skills transcend, and always sort of thought of myself as a personable person and have some great relationships. And I think understanding how to also manage very driven people in different scenarios. I think something I learned at TK that was difficult was managing a remote team. I found really difficult because I didn't have that same face-to-face interaction, and I'm someone who really cares about people's private lives and sort of really cares about that person in general and will do what I can to help them. If you don't have that same level of relationship, especially as you move up in the business world, managing relationships and managing scenarios and doing that at an expert level would be really cool.
That's awesome. Well, I just want to thank you for taking the time to join me on the podcast today. I'd like to give you the floor, plug everything you got right now.
And follow me on LinkedIn at Tim Hyde, on all social channels, Tim Will Hyde, TIMWILLHYD. Thanks so much for having me, man, and I really hope we get to, stay in contact and continue to speak, but it was a pleasure, and, keep it up with the podcast. I think you've had some amazing episodes.
No, I really appreciate that. And if you're ever in the Ottawa area, definitely let me know if you're ever traveling out this way in Canada. I'd like to meet up in person one day. That'd be awesome. I know sometimes I head over to England. I got family in Leeds, so I'm over there every once in a while, but
amazing. Thank you, guys.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, man. And thank you to everybody that's listened to this episode, whether you've listened the entire way through or you've only listened to bits and pieces. I really appreciate you taking the time to check this out. Do me a favor, guys. Go follow Tim on LinkedIn. Follow him on Instagram, Twitter. I'll make sure everything's linked in the show notes down below. If you'd like to follow me, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at the Jacob Kelly. You can find the podcast on Instagram at My Social Pod and on YouTube at My Social Life. Thank you once again for listening, everybody. We'll talk soon.